Good evening. It is 7:01 p.m. This open meeting of the Acton Finance Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth and the local state of emergency declared by the Acton Board of Selectmen and Board of Health due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the Board of Selectmen has suspended all public gatherings, and in accordance with the Governor's order, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The Governor's order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations and/or committee votes of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment at the very beginning. For this meeting is convening by video conference via Zoom app is posted on the meeting agenda town's website calendar, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda, if applicable. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. All right, first item of business is citizens' comments. Would any citizens like to comment? I don't see any hands raised, so we're going to move on to the next item, which is a presentation by the Community Preservation Committee. If you hold on 1 second. Something strange happened here. Here we go. Okay. We should have Ray Yakubi appearing in a second. Hello, Ray.
Good evening. I had to unmute myself.
Would you like me to make Walter Foster a panelist also?
Yes, please.
All right, here he comes. Now, I believe you had slides to show us. Are you or Walter going to share?
Yes,
screen share?
I was going to try to see. Oh, God. Hold on. There we go. That's a little bit better. Sorry. I'm still trying to. I was going to say Walter is also on the Community Preservation Committee. Welcome, Walter.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us.
Okay. Now the question is, can I screen share?
Does it say screen share at the bottom?
I'm looking for. There it is. There
Wonderful.
it is.
Go ahead.
Okay. And what do I want to screen share? I want to screen share that. Okay, let me see here. Okay. Do you see the first slide?
No.
Okay, hold on. I got to fool around with the technology here. See what. Oh, come on, machine. Okay. Oh, I guess it's a minor detail. I have to click on the word share.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go. Okay. Okay. Let me just get this thing started. Make sure. Okay. Everybody sees the slides right now? Okay,
Yes.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the Finance Committee for asking us to speak. What I plan on doing tonight is actually going through what's going to be on the warrant article from the CPC this year, and then go through each of the projects in a summary fashion, and then open it up for any questions. This is kind of the total slide that we have. We had $1,721,881 in the all-important 14 cents was our funding pool this year. As a parenthetic comment, we had initially a little over $2.25 million in project requests. So this is a very challenging year for us. There were more asks than we had money to give. And there's some detail here in terms of the money we got, from the surcharge, the matching funds, interest earned, and then recaptures in terms of how we came up with the 1.7. But the 1.8 was what we got from the state. This is a quick list of the projects. The historic set aside, let me kind of at least address that one first. It's $68,000. We did, by statute, we have to allocate 10% of the funds we get from the state to historic preservation. We did not get applications totaling that amount. So we fell short by $68,000, if you will, in terms of, we fell short. The applications came in, fell short by $68,000 to meet the 10% requirement. So that's by definition going into a set aside that will allocate next year or for future historic projects. Open space was $393. Their original request was $400, but I'll go into that. Regional housing services is an annual funding we do for them is $34,000. The community housing program is $40,000. The first historic project was the pencil bridge factory, which again we'll go into a little more detail. It's $44,000. There's a archaeological review that it's a kind of a set aside for when people or developers or homeowners want to develop land to go in and make sure there's no artifacts on the land, primarily from indigenous peoples, before we would proceed. River Street's $100,000. The Gardner Playfield was $100,000. The NARA Space Pavilion $240,000. Jones $115,000. The Acton Historical Society had a small project for a textile collection. It was $10,646. The big one this year was the $500,000 for the Main Street development for affordable housing. And then we have the administrative CPO program sort. So that's kind of the breakdown of everything. Okay, the set aside I mentioned, that is because we have to meet the 10% statutory requirement. Open space is under a certain amount of stress, shall we say. Stonefield Farm agricultural preservation, we just voted on this recently, which will go into town. They've asked to spend $1,230,000 from the set aside funds. The debt service to the right terrace property is at $76,800, and on Piper Lane property is $59,900. This last item we had not voted on yet. We'll be voting on it at our next meeting. The current balance is $1,009,000. We're recommending $393 to be added. If town meeting appropriates both the right terrace and Piper debt service and the Stonefield, the remaining balance will be $534. Andy has done a good job, but there are a lot of projects out. I mean, not projects, but potential parcels that may come to the town or the committee on this. Again, the regional housing services. Again, typically this is coming as a 2-year appropriation. We did it as 1 year, given because of the pressure we were under. And again, it's an intermunicipal agreement. that currently includes Acton, Bedford, Concord, Lexington, Lincoln, Maynard, Sudbury, and Wayland, and Weston. Again, it's what the $34,000 is allocating 420 hours of staff time for that activity. Again, this is an annual, typically an annual request from the Community Housing Fund. Again, we're recommending $40,000. This money actually goes to the Housing Authority, but they have to get approval from the Board of Selectmen to spend the money. So we're funding it and we're giving it to them. So it's not a set aside for us, but it's funds that they have available. But any spending that money has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. There's a high degree of leverage with these funds because there's approximately $600,000 of gift funds. Again, primarily it's exploring feasibility of creating supported rental housing for disabled in town. This is the Acton historical, again, a historical project. How many of you are familiar with the pencil factory? Okay, 2 people. That's interesting. How many people know where it is? Okay. What this project is, actually, it's a project that I personally, I like projects that bring history to people. And if you are if you drive on the Bruce Freeman Trail, I lived in town for 36 years. It wasn't until the Bruce Freeman Trail was open, there's a plaque where the pencil factory is, which is, it's nice. I mean, you learn something. This is going to expand that access. It's actually going to build a bridge across the foundation and into that area and have some more kind of kiosks, for lack of a better term, saying what it is and explain what the foundation is whatnot. It's going to be in 2 phases. Again, this year kind of designing and permitting, and then bidding and construction. The $44,000 is for phase 1. The historical, this preliminary archaeological and historical review was the Historic Commission approached us and basically want to have a fund for quick turnaround professional archaeological determination if there's any likelihood of finding something where a house or something's going to be developed. If you will, I think it was in London recently where they, or maybe it was Rome. I could read about both of them where you bump into stuff all of a sudden. This is kind of to be proactive when it comes to primarily indigenous. We have a lot of Indian artifacts in town. And it's basically to say, well, is there something here before we allow development to go on? It's new. They anticipate there's only maybe 1 or 2 of these a year. Okay, the River Street. This is the final design and permitting of the dam removal. The total cost of this project is going to be $1.3 million. And the town's going to be working on grants. The dam and seawall repair removal has been identified as the most likely funding source where they can probably get up to $1 million. Again, a highly leveraged project, but this is on the critical path as to what we do with that parcel as a town. Gardner Field, we had, I think, where we have a paucity of historic projects, we had an abundance of recreational projects. This one, actually, the original ask on this one was over $700,000. Where we ended up is we're recommending $100,000 to be allocated to play structures. There's a very active group in town saying they want this developed. We felt that it needed further vetting in terms of what they were going to do, but we felt comfortable that the playground needs some work, and we felt comfortable doing it on the play structures. So that's how we arrived at the $100,000. So we're tying it to that and not to other things that may happen with the with Gardner. NARA Sports Pavilion, this is the completion of, for those of you familiar, you know where Miracle Field is in NARA? In the upper part of the field, we actually got a donation from a builder a couple years ago with a couple of buildings. They kind of sat there for a while. Quite candidly, as a town, the donation probably cost us more. We've probably been better off just building from scratch. But this is finally getting those structures completely finished and done. One of the focuses that the committee has brought this year is we're focusing on getting things finished. There has been a history on recreational projects of ask, and then they don't get done for whatever reason. The recreation department has gotten much better in the last couple of years, and this would complete this particular part of the project up at NARA Field. Again, this is phase 2, and again, this is going to be some, excuse me, this is actually, the title on this slide is wrong. This is, excuse me, this is Jones Field that we're talking about. Also one where it's another phase of completing and rounding out what we're doing with that particular playground. This is basically the pour rubber surfacing around the current structures. For those of you, this is an evolution. For those of you who don't know the history of Jones Field, when I was growing up with my kid, it was a baseball field, and that was it. It was kind of a wasteland. It's now evolved into much more of a viable playground serving a broader population, and this is just enhancing it and building it out. And again, it's a fully accessible playground as well. So this is one again where we're trying to get to completing projects as opposed to having lots of projects half done. This is the Main Street development. This is the big one, so to speak. They asked for, and we're recommending $500,000 for the pre-development costs. This is a highly leveraged project. It's going to be well over $15 million, and there's going to that we're being leveraged from both state and private financing. There's, as a parenthetic, there's 100 people on the wait list, seniors, to get into senior housing in town. This has a lot of town support, and we felt very strongly it was a priority, and that's why we funded it, or recommended funding at this level. Not much to be said for this. This is, don't take offense, Steve. This is to pay for people like Steve who are overhead. I'm just kidding. There's a lot of work that goes into overseeing project support, reporting during the year, and overseeing what we're doing that primarily the planning staff does. So this goes in, it helps fund that support for the town. That's the end of the presentation. I kind of sped through it. I hope you don't mind me reading the slides too much, but any questions at this point that anybody? Mr. Bourdon, please. Or I should ask the chair, is it okay for me to recognize?
Yeah, yes, please go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, Roland.
Thanks, Ray. Good presentation. I was reading on the CPC article today in the warrant, and the warrant said the RSO office had a line next to it said 32.5. Then in the column with all the numbers said 34,000. So I just want to point that out, that should be corrected on the town warrant.
Yes.
To get that 32.5 out of there, so it doesn't confuse anybody at town meeting.
Right. We're refining some of the finance, and we found a couple other things that actually that we need to vote on too, that we haven't voted on yet, that we're going to have a meeting next week on.
And the pencil factory, I know that is a walk that trail a couple times.
Okay.
That'd be great. In addition to that, so thank you.
Duly noted. Christine.
Can you just fill me in for a minute, if you can, what the historical significance of the pencil factory is and why we're investing in it?
The pencil factory, okay, at one point, Acton was a rather industrial town. This is highlighting that this is a part of the town where a lot of the industry existed. If you go there today, where the plaque is on the Bruce Freeman, it kind of says, "Oh, guess what? There used to be a factory here," and it tells you a little bit about it. And it says, if you look, you can see the foundation, parts of the foundation. This is actually going further into the pencil factory site, so there'll actually be a bridge where you can cross over and see it more, and make the actual site more accessible. Is primarily what it is. I think in the last 2 years, from at least at a personal level, why these projects are important is bringing more of the history and making it aware to people in town, like a corollary project that we did 2 years, the Hosmer House. Shame on me, I've lived in here, I didn't even know where the Hosmer House was until this project came up and the work they've done, and now you notice it. I mean, the fact is, a lot of these things are there. Unless you go hunt them out, you don't know they're there. And the Hosmer House now, given what they've done with a significant funding of CPC, makes it accessible. And you actually drive down 27 and look up and say, "Oh, I wonder what that is." So that's really kind of where the focus on these projects are, at least the last 2 or 3 years, is we're asking, is this bringing the history to the people more? And this is a nice nexus, in my opinion, of a recreational project that was funded, i.e. the Bruce Freeman Trail, that is an enormously popular and utilized resource in town, and tying history to it now so that we're bringing it together. So that's where, they made a very good presentation, and even I learned even more. So that's, I think, the kind of the source is making it more accessible. It's a piece of it's there. It's kind of interesting. This really makes it so I've stopped and I go about 10 feet and I don't want to go any further because I'm not, this is going to make you be able to walk in and actually see more of what was going on there.
And Ray, if I may share, it's
Please,
a very interesting piece of history, good representation of the industrial age. Ebenezer Wood came up with a patent for lead pencils, shared it openly. One company shared it with was the Faber Company, which is now the major pencil maker in the United States to this day. So it's Acton's link to that trip of times, just FYI.
Okay, cool. I think any of us who've had kids in the elementary system are aware of the Hosmer House because our kids actually all do field trips to the Hosmer House in first or second grade. Will there be images of the old pencil factory as part of the display once you get over the bridge?
I believe so.
There's an existing kiosk, so it's divided. The bridge will span and bring people from the Bruce Freeman, and there's a wonderful, the Trail Through Time system. There's an amazing kiosk right at the pencil factory that shows not only it as built, but all the mechanisms, because of course it was with a water wheel. So there's great pictorials that exist already. It's just getting people to that.
So it's tying it together, so to speak. I believe Jason had the question, and then Steve, I'll come back to you. Yes, Jason.
I have a couple of quick questions. The first one is, I see that the interest return over the last year seems pretty healthy. It seems to be a fairly sizable chunk of what you have available to you. Is that because the balances on the different buckets, I understand there's different buckets for recreation, for historical, for housing. I think there's another one or two that I'm missing. Are those balances particularly healthy, and that's why we're able to get 100,000 plus in interest revenue for the year?
I believe so, but I don't have. I'm trying to see. This is really here's where we have the source of funds right now in terms of the current set aside.
He's talking about the 140,000 in interest,
yes,
which is on the very first slide, the overall slide,
right?
And that you are correct. It's all the buckets, but it's also people, the funds stay with us until they're drawn down. The way that all of these projects work is you have to perform the work and then provide the funds. So it's not only the set aside and of course the monies that come in, all of those set asides, which the open space one has been very healthy, but also all the project monies that have not been spent yet because they sit there waiting as they're drawn down. So it's a very robust, and every year it brings in some good interest.
So that actually is that feeds into the corollary of my next question very cleanly, which is: are there any open projects, or we tend to think of these as warrant articles? I know that they're not. I know that CPC is its own mechanism. But are there any projects that have been open past due that have expired and that can be recouped? The money that was allocated for the specific project and not spent, or it's been too many years, or it came in under budget. Are there any monies that can be recouped at this time? And I'm assuming that that's part of the reason why the interest payment is as healthy as it is. So do we have an accounting of what projects have expired or are under budget that can be recouped?
The short answer, not off the top of my head, there's none that are about to be expired.
Okay.
And we do have, we do have a spreadsheet where we're following that actually very closely now in terms of where we are with the spending. I alluded to issues with that we've had recreation projects in the past where they ended up not doing them and we got the money back. We're trying to focus more that we don't have that situation. So speaking as chair, I know one of our goals is not to be in a situation where we're getting money back because we'd like to see these projects done.
I recall that about 2 years ago there was an issue with a skate park where the project was about to expire and Boxborough was about to pull the money from it.
Yes.
I'm assuming that got finalized and we got our full money from Boxborough as well.
Walter, would you like to add?
Yeah, Ray, on that slide that you're showing right now, do you see the recapture funds from prior year projects of 242,842? That's exactly what Jason is asking about, and at the bottom of the slide deck is a breakdown. If you can go down to it's the second to last slide in the slide deck, all the way after there it is.
And there it is.
This is the breakdown of that 242, Jason, and you can see the skate park is here. See the 90,000? That's what came back to us. What the skate park did, because that had been a multiple funding from actually many years ago. It's now all done, but they didn't build one section of it, so those monies all came back to us. So every year, as part of our process, we do a recapture memo, and those come back in. This was a particularly robust year because of the NARA picnic pavilion restroom never got built. So those
seems like a lot of money.
projects added a lot.
Yeah, and we got our full amount from Boxborough on that one, correct?
Correct.
Great. And Madam Chair, I have one last question, if I may, please.
Sure.
Thank you. For the RHSO for the southwest corner of town on Powder Mill there, as it abuts up against Maynard, will there, to accomplish the goals as set forth by CPC and the RHSO plan, will there be any zoning changes that you are going to bring to town meeting to recommend?
No.
So,
At least I can speak with two hats here because I'm on the planning board. Okay. It's rare that the CPC puts forth zoning changes as part of its funding process. Any zoning changes would be coming either through the select board or the planning board.
and the RHSO plan as it currently stands requires no zoning changes, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's fantastic. I appreciate hearing that. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Steve, I believe you had your hand up.
Grace,
thanks,
Sahana
Ray.
has hers up for afterwards.
I'm sorry.
Sahana has her hand up also for after Steve.
Okay. Right. But I remember Steve had, I just want to make it, we're going in order. At least I'm attempting to, so thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Ray. As far as the River Street project goes, how does this work? Is the project approved? I guess what comes first? Us putting up our matching money, and then it gets approved, or has it been approved and then we put up our matching money? And what's the probability that it gets approved if it hasn't been?
You're talking about the million, the big money?
Yeah.
Okay.
Damn it, yeah.
The way this was described to me is that what we're doing is the final design. I don't want to say it's a fait accompli because it's safety and it's because the state is saying it has to come down. The source of the funding is we're in good standing where that funding will be forthcoming. And that's as best as I can recall. Do you want to add to that, Walter?
Yeah, that's correct, Ray. As I understand it, Steve, this completes the planning stage, and the next stage will be to bring the dam down. We were told this was the last request to CPC,
right,
that the construction or deconstruction of the dam will come from other sources, these grants, if that helps.
That helps. And my only other question, Madam Chair, is if we build a bridge to the pencil factory, can we build a bridge to the Potato Cave, which is my all-time favorite CPC project?
No bridge needed. It's accessible.
Is there a question there?
I just want to make sure that we have a way to show off the, what do we call it? Enigmatic stone chamber? It's right next to the pencil factory.
It's right on the trail. Right on the trail.
I'm sorry, did you say, Sahani, you had a question?
Yeah, more than a question. Trying to understand the process. I know there is limited amount of funds for CPC to allocate to different projects. Since we're going to have the next, next agenda item would be the dog park, I'm just interested in knowing. There was a lot of talk about that and why didn't it make it to the CPC? What was the reasoning behind it?
There was a lot of discussion, and the committee voted 4-4, so it didn't get recommended.
Okay. Any particular?
No, quite candidly, no. I mean, the dog park is engendering a lot of discussion in town. That's all I can say. And in our committee, when it came down to, it was a 4-4 vote. Hence, it didn't carry. There was nothing. There really wasn't anything further to be said. The process was 4-4, so it didn't get funding.
That's fine. I was just curious. Thanks.
Sure. Ms. David.
Hi, three for me. Just to be clear on the River Street, is it that once this 100,000 is appropriated for this project, to the best of your knowledge, that the cost will be borne by the state or whomever, but not the Town of Acton or CPC?
I can speak not for CPC. I can say because what we were told is they would not come to CPC for any further funding.
And who is that?
Details, quite candidly, the details as to whether or not there's some money that the town would have to spend to get a grant or whatnot, I don't know. I don't want to represent the town in my answer because I don't know for sure. But it is heavily leveraged. There are grants and sources of money they anticipate they're going to be able to get to. Does that mean zero money from Acton? I don't know.
Got it. Okay, so it's possible. We just, to the best of your knowledge, CPC wouldn't be asked for any additional funds, but potentially the town could be.
I will tell you, if they came to CPC for further funds, they would get a very chilly reception because of their current representations.
Got it. Okay. Thanks for that. And then, just on the Main Street development, can you, for my sake, and maybe for some of the committee, just expand upon, this is a little bit to me like River Street, where 500,000 for the pre-development, but there's a lot of other potential costs that would go along with that down the road. And I know it's a squishier area, but can you just give us a sense at what other costs could follow on, like where we are in the stage of pre-development versus development versus building, et cetera?
Unfortunately, again, I don't think this committee is the right one to give that answer. That is, I think, really it has to be addressed to the housing authority. This piece of it we're funding.
Okay.
All the sub pieces and where they absolutely are, etc. I don't feel comfortable speaking for them or speaking for the whole project.
Fair enough.
And you want to add to that, Walter?
No, I agree, Ray, and I guess because the CPC, of course, has funded a number of projects built this way. This is, as I understand it, the money to get it in the ground, and it leverages at the next stage as a construction will be largely leveraged with state and federal grants. That's our understanding. But beyond that, I would rely upon the AHA to weigh in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Walter. Anything else, David?
Yeah, just one more, and it's more just on the general funding. Is I think it's been a few years now, but we talked about the state matching grant, and this is, I'm almost sure, not the right way to look at it, but as far as the State Community Preservation Trust Fund receipt of $247,000 versus the surcharge collected in fiscal 20 of $1,082,000, it seems like it's kind of 25%-ish of what's actually collected in town. Mm-hmm. Would you say that's a fair way to look at that? Again, I don't understand the mechanics from the state side of when it's paid out.
I would, and I'm gonna ask Walter to kind of weigh in on this too as well. That's a fair way of looking at it, but because of the nature of CPC and more towns getting in, how much money changes dramatically from year to year. And one year it could be 50%, another year it could be 5%. So that's a fair way of looking at it, but I don't think there's been a consistent level that you can say, oh, for every dollar we're giving, we're getting 50 cents back from the state as well. Because it's amorphous. It's not fixed.
But has that percentage, and again, maybe this is a topic for another time.
I think it has to. There's a lot of moving parts. It has to do with how many other communities are involved, with the match. I mean, so it made my head hurt when I heard about it the first time, because it wasn't like it was by going in at we're eligible to get matching funds. There's no guarantee there will be any matching funds in any given year.
Do we have 5 years historical data?
We
probably do, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
What I can share with you both, first of all, to go directly to your question, David, it varies generally between 30 to 50% right now. The state matching funds are comprised entirely of additional fees at the Registry of Deeds. And there's been two important legislative developments within the last 5 years to show a commitment by the state to get the CPC back to full funding, which would be a much larger percent. So I've been on this committee since 2003 when it came in, and our percentage match was almost dollar for dollar in year 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's because there weren't many cities and towns. There are 3 separate fundraisings, which depends upon what level you're at. But the largest piece of the state matching is how much funds are in basically the Registry of Deeds bucket, the bag there. In the last 5 years, we vary between 30 to 50%. The highest we've gotten, I think, is like somewhere in the low 40s as of late. What we're hearing, because of the economic boom, is next year's might be much larger. So it really is dependent, but the state continues to make progress to fully fund that. And we anticipate the percentage match will continue to grow in the near future.
Great, yeah, thanks for that. And is Boston in the fund now?
So yes, Boston joins, but like Cambridge, they only spend it on certain things, but Boston is in the fund. It is.
Okay, so I mean, just generally, all things equal, there's some programs going on at the state level that, in your view, could increase the fund in aggregate, and the percentage is how we look at will hopefully increase in the future. Is this the lowest as a percentage that it's been, this 247?
Last year was lower. This year was a little bit higher.
Okay.
This year, percentage-wise, was a little bit higher.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, just, I mean, for the finance committee's sake, maybe not for the warrant, but that would be interesting data to have, just to know as a percent of how it's trended, and then if you know how many communities are in it now, and you know, we could maybe speculate or extrapolate, but your context around what else is going on at the state level is also really helpful to kind of, you know, bolster both sides of that.
And what we have seen is, because Boston and others have gotten in, what we're seeing at the State House is a deeper commitment, because it's not just the suburbs or the, we'll call it more rural communities. Cambridge is in, Boston is in, and because of that, we think it's gaining momentum to get more secure state matching funds, because now the bigger folks are in the pond, so they're willing now. So that's what we're seeing as a trend, and we can certainly prepare that for next year or get you that data.
And then anyway, just one more question real quick is how is the money at the state level? Where does that come from? Is it like sales tax or income tax, or how?
It's the registry of deeds.
Registry of deeds. Yeah. Of course, you said that.
Every time you buy, it's like a $25. It's a certain percentage. So when you go and record your deed, there's a separate line item for like $25 or $10 that goes into the CPC fund statewide at every registry of deeds.
So I mean, and again, for another time, but technically, you probably have communities that have been paying that for 2 decades now, who are like, what does this go to? And we want our piece of it.
We got in very early.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I think it's been a brilliant, particularly what I call leveraging of funds for this town. We got in early. We were within the first 50 communities that got in. We're now over 100. We tipped. There's at least 160 of the 300, whatever we have, 360 cities and towns.
Yeah.
There's like 160, more than half are in, and but we've had 18 years of being able to get those monies back from the state, where all the other cities and towns have not been able to. So I think it's been a good thing to try to get more back from Beacon Hill for our town.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
Jason, hold on. I think Mike had his hand up.
Yeah.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of points of clarification. The Housing Authority plan for Main Street, their proposal was to pay the town $1 million. Even though we bought the land for $1.8 million, they would come up with $1 million, half of which was the $500,000 from you. And that's all they asked for, as far as CPC funds were concerned. And then the rest of the funds, they would come up with their traditional financing sources that they usually do. I don't know if it's bonding or whatever they do, but they said they had it handled. The second point, getting back to the dog park again, just ask a theoretical question. If the dog park was at any location other than Main Street, would the CPC still say no?
I think the short answer to that is...
Was it the location that was the issue? Is it political pressure?
It's pure speculation. And to be honest with you, I cannot say, and I don't want to characterize the vote.
The 4 negative votes, they didn't have a reason to...
I'm telling you.
Why they voted no?
It was all over the map. There was lots of different feelings.
I'm just wondering if the dog park committee
there wasn't a single thing. Okay, in my opinion, there wasn't a single. So I don't want to kind of dissect and parse the vote, and I can't say there was one rallying point. I think there was a lot of controversy, and being on the planning board, you have that. Each person kind of said, maybe I just don't feel comfortable with this. If it was in another place, I'm not convinced the vote would have been any different. Because I think there was sentiment on the part of some people, why do we need a dog park at all? So, I mean, we're wading into areas that I don't feel comfortable kind of either defending or even characterizing, and I want to respect. It was a 4-4 vote, which tells you there was a lot of difference of opinion. And
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Jason?
Just to add on to what Mr. Wellinghoff said, in future years, I would love to see a 5, 7, or 10-year trailing percentage of what we've received as a statewide match, just to make sure that our continued ongoing investment is warranted. So please, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, since it'll be next year's chair, please note that I would love to see that type of historical calculation just for completeness sake.
And I'd add, I think our committee would like to see it as well. So I think that's something that, working with the staff, we've come a long way the last 3 years in terms of some of the reporting we're getting on a more consistent basis from staff, and this is something we would add to that.
Love it when we're in agreement. Thank you very much.
Okay. Are we done? No, I'm
Thank you very much, Ray. It's been a pleasure.
well, thanks, Walter, too. I'm glad.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Walter.
Thank you all.
Okay. Take care, guys.
One sec. I've been talking. I'm going to now bring up Tom Gillespie from the Dog Park Committee, who will be speaking to us about. Hello, Tom.
Hello, good evening. It seemed right as I joined, on cue, there was a dog barking, so in the background.
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Gillespie. I'm the current chair of the Acton Dog Park Committee. Let me first say how much I appreciate you taking a few minutes to hear from us and for all the work that you do for this town. Municipal government, I've learned over the past several years, is sometimes hard work, but I believe it's worth it, and am happy to play a part in that. So I'll start sharing my screen, and my intention tonight is to bring you just a few slides about the financial aspects of the dog park project that is underway. So I've really focused on, again, the financial aspects. I have additional information. I'm happy to answer other questions. Sounded like there were some interests about other aspects in the previous set of questions. So I am prepared and happy, but I wanted to use your time as, carefully as I could. So with that, hopefully you can see the first slide of my deck, yes? So
yes.
far, good. Okay, great. All right, so we've been working for about 3 years. Started off in order to understand the needs and also possible sites and funding. Again, I won't go into a lot of the history. I can if you want, but I don't think that's the primary interest here. The big financial headline associated with this project is a rather hefty leveraging of $25K in proposed FY22 municipal funds. that would be a 10% match for a $250K Stanton Foundation construction grant. And that $250K would be used to construct an enclosed and complete dog park in Acton. I'll be talking a little bit more about the site, etc. But this is really the big headline. And if the Stanton construction grant is not awarded after we go through the application process, etc., we anticipate that municipal funds would probably not be used. We would have to reevaluate at that point to understand the future of the dog park in Acton. We're glad to have a Friends of Acton Community Dog Park well established with active fundraising underway and ongoing, and this will be another considerable piece of funding, not so much for the construction grant, but the construction grant itself has limits on what they will cover. They focus on the hard construction things like fencing and sidewalks and ground cover, etc. They specifically do not include construction costs in their grant for things like agility structures or potentially additional benches or signage, etc. So we know that there will be some additional costs associated with the park, and we anticipate that through the Acton Friends, the Dog Park Friends group, etc. We also have researched and solidified funds for the annual maintenance required, and I'll have a little bit more details about that. The Recreation Department and the Land Use Department is sort of an umbrella organization over the dog park. Their support is fully on board, and things would be run through them, much like many of the other recreation areas are through Acton today. The site is, perhaps as you know, the 348 Main Street site. I have a graphic of it in a few slides. It was approved by the Board of Selectmen at the November 16th, so just at the end of last year. Please stop me along the way if you have any questions, and then I do have some time at the end, obviously, for questions. So to go over those grants in a little bit more detail, the Stanton Foundation grant being the primary funding source for this dog park. It's well established in Massachusetts. Many towns, including many of our neighbors, have obtained them. They are well understood, well accessible, and we have a fair degree of confidence being able to achieve the grants. Both their design and construction grant require several things, namely that the land come from the municipality when we're set on that, and then a commitment for this 10% match of up to $250K of the hard construction costs, which is where we arrive at the $25K figure. The $250K for construction costs is obviously an estimate at this point, but based upon the parameters and the criteria that we had for a suitable sized dog park for a town like Acton, we feel that we are going to be using the majority, if not all, or a little more than the construction cost of $250K. And that was, again, through talking with neighbor projects, getting an understanding, looking at their budgets, etc. So this is not just a, educated, well, it is an educated guess, but there's lots of research behind it. The design grant would be first up. There are only 10 awarded per year, but we feel, again, confident that we can go after that. The design grant would be given at up to 10% of the estimated construction cost. So again, if the $250K is the construction cost, a 10% grant for design would afford us about $25K in design funds. We've spoken with several design firms, and we believe that though that amount, $25K, is sufficient to get the designs going. We'll probably have to haggle with them a little bit, etc., but they know full well where the money comes from, or the money amounts on the Stanton side of things. So we're pretty comfortable that the Stanton design grant will get us the design work we need to then move on to the construction phase, where the construction grant from the Stanton Foundation is available, again, up to that $250K, covering the hard construction costs, everything that you need to bring the park online, bring it, get it open, have people start using it. There may be some things that we want to do in the future. They also have grants available for capital improvements, etc. But we're obviously going to be focusing 100% initially on getting the thing funded, built, and online, and then we'll see where needs take us from there. So in terms of some of the financial details, the dog license fee was increased last year by $2, producing about $4K annually for the dog park. We'll be using that $4K this year as part of that municipal 10% match, since it's money coming from the town. And that going forward will be used for the ongoing maintenance costs. We've confirmed that $4K is pretty adequate based upon talking with neighboring towns, etc. And again, we have some support through existing town departments, recreation, and land use. We'll also be looking, and obviously one of the reasons for getting together tonight is a one-time municipal expenditure in fiscal year 2022 of a 21K amount. It's a town meeting warrant item, as you know. So you take $4K and the license fees plus the 21K from this one-time allocation, and you get your 25K municipal match, allowing us to move forward with the Stanton grants. Unfortunately, we can't start any of the grant. We can't even start design. We can't even start construction grant applications until these municipal requirements, the land and the match, have been met. And so we're really focused 100% on getting that established, and then we'll be going straight away to Stanton. As you just heard, there weren't any CPC funds awarded for the dog park this year. I might add a little bit of color to what Ray was saying. My sense was that they had an overwhelming task this year, as I'm sure he indicated, in terms of the requests just significantly exceeding what was going to be available, and they had to pick and choose somehow. And there were some folks that were just, frankly, not as much in favor of that particular or the amenity of a dog park over other amenities that they had to consider, and priorities in terms of getting some projects completed that had been sort of waiting for their completion, etc. So there was not anything fundamentally wrong. There were some concerns, obviously, about location, and we'll talk about some of those. I'll use this opportunity to say, literally, there was no and is no perfect location for a dog park in Acton. If we had a perfect location, we probably wouldn't be here. But we looked at over 13 properties, evaluated each one, met with many neighbors, had many public forums, etc. And there were pros and cons, significant pros and cons, with every single one. And so that's where we landed this year. And again, if the Stanton Design Grant is not awarded because they are capped at 10 per year, we think that private fundraising could probably be sufficient and diverted to getting the design going, and then proceed ahead to a Stanton construction grant. So even then, we have some contingencies. And as I mentioned, if the construction grant is not awarded by the Stanton Foundation, we're really going to have to take a look at what we would want to do at that point, because obviously $250K price tag for a dog park is something that, you know, it's obviously a pretty large number, and we just have to figure out what we would want to do at that point. So here's the 348 and 352 Main Street. I really won't go through a lot of these benefits. You can see them, but I wanted to give you a visual picture. You can see Route 27 Main Street running right down the middle. The public safety building is up and slightly to the right. And then Kennedy Landscaping is in that upper, still somewhat on the right. You come across the private Isaac Davis Way. You have the 352 Main Street. Sometimes we call it the upper parcel, which would be used primarily for parking. And then it's the 348, the lower parcel, that is just a little over 2 acres. And you see some very sharp corners here, etc. This is just an outline of the design. This is not where the fencing would go. We need designers that know how to properly design a dog park given the spaces that they have in order to construct that, etc. So this is just literally an outline of the plots themselves. It does have some challenges. We've talked about some of those as well. Some of those have been brought up in terms of the citizens petition that's on the warrant this year. I am happy to talk about any of these, but again, they're largely non-financial. So I didn't know if you wanted to dig into any of these or not, and I'm just going to sort of jump over them because again, I wanted to keep a focus on the financial part. We do have a timeline all the way through, middle end of next year. We might be able to open the dog park. Obviously, a lot of these things can change along the way. So then I wanted to turn my attention to the citizens petition itself, because I know that you're going to have to make a recommendation because it is a warrant article on that. And so my goal here was to give you some direct information about some of the, particularly again, financial aspects raised in that citizens petition. There are several mentions of the town needing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to complete the dog park. Frankly, the Stanton construction grant will cover all of the hard construction costs to bring up a complete dog park. There's no additional items necessary. We know that there's going to be some additional costs that Stanton doesn't cover, like water hookup and some signage, but we've budgeted for those. We know how much they are. We expect them to be handled through fundraising, in-kind gifts. We do not expect to be asking any additional town budget to wrap up the other things that go into a dog park. And we've done our due diligence, including reviewing this with the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, and the town manager. And really the town impact at this point is limited to the 10% construction match that we've gone over, and also the land grant itself. And there are other efforts in terms of other portions of that property with the town manager and other organizations working actively to pursue grants that improve the areas outside of the dog park. So if the expectations of the town would be having to spend a lot of money outside of the dog park, given the current state of that property, there's work that has been underway and is still underway in terms of options for that don't involve burdening the town with these thousands of dollars. So in fact, bringing the dog park sort of takes care of a large portion of that, pretty unsightly property, and it does so through that highly leveraged grant. And the other income source, the notion of other income sources, commercial or otherwise, they've been fully investigated by the Main Street Committee. I think that Mike knows a thing or two about that as well, and by town leadership as part of it. There's also concern about non-involvement or disenfranchisement of citizens in this decision. We have worked very hard to try to get the word out, including surveys, presentations, meetings with Board of Selectmen, many hour public sessions with the Board of Selectmen, booths, farmers market, winter carnival, a significant survey with some pretty strong numbers behind it, establishing whether the Select Board has authority to designate the land for that purpose, et cetera, et cetera. Also, some people wonder why we need a dog park, and the difference here was that it would be enclosed. And yes, we're blessed with large amounts of conservation land and trails, but they're not enclosed. And there are many dog breeds, dog sizes, dog situations that really cannot be safely off leash in some of the areas that we have today. And that's the whole purpose for a dog. Not only that, but also the fellowship and the community that tends to develop around these. There is a number of things that, again, I've just listed here. They're, to me, not financially oriented. I didn't want to spend time unless you want me to. And that was pretty much it for my presentation. I hope that was short enough for you all.
Thank you. What questions do we have? Steve?
Yeah, just a couple questions. How many dogs are there in Acton?
Great question. So we have just about 2,000 registered dogs, and hence with the $2K increase in the license fee, we get to the $4K annual funding for maintenance purposes in the dog park.
And where does all the poop go?
Yeah, good question. That's certainly one of the concerns that people often raise. We've done tons of research, not only by talking to other neighbors, dog parks that have been well established in other neighboring towns, but also material at this point available sort of nationwide. There is a community that develops around these dog parks, and that is well known and well established. And those community members are very self-protective or very motivated to maintain the dog park, and to the extent that you oftentimes find people picking up poop not even from their dog because they want it to be kept clean. We would be, of course, I think we're even required as part of the Stanton grant to make plenty of bags available, an appropriate place to put them. These are all standard things in dog park designs at this point. Also, the choice of the material, the ground covering, is important to make sure that it drains properly, that there's a natural sort of cleansing of that, etc. So again, when we've gone and talked to Chelmsford, Billerica, Ayr, Natick, Maynard, it's not an issue.
Well, if people pick up after their dogs, that's fine. If you have disposal stations in the dog park, that's fine. Who empties those disposal stations, I guess, is the question.
Sure. Rec department has a system of refuse pickup that they do at all of the playgrounds in NARA Park today. That could just sort of be extended to include that refuse pickup. We need, and we've checked with them in terms of, is that realistic? Can they do that? And yes, that's just going to be added to the list.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Christine?
I think I saw there briefly at the end that town council has stated that use of Isaac Davis Way won't be a problem, but I wonder if you anticipate any legal costs going forward on the use of that roadway, given that the citizens are fairly convinced that they have to give permission for the use of that road.
I guess anything I'd say on that matter would be purely speculative. I share the concern, but I'm in no position to comment on that other than I know that it is the town's view of things, and the neighbors and hence the citizens' petitions view are quite different.
Okay, and then really briefly, can you just give an overview of what the $250,000 is going to look like in the end? Because I'm picturing grass and fence and some water. So I assume there's a little more to it.
Let's see what I can find. So probably this is one that I will bring up as one sketch that we have where, and the dog park would be off to the left here in that sketch. We would like to have some, let's say, attractive fencing along 27. This particular rendition is obviously inspired by what they've done at the Hosmer House, but there's other options as well. And then there's the more typical fencing. You'll notice a separation between a larger dog park, an area for larger dogs closer to 27, and then towards the back probably an area for smaller dogs. That's a typical separation that's done in dog parks. You'll see the sort of so-called airlock gate in the middle there, where it allows the dogs and their owners to enter safely before they are brought into the larger area, and also from dogs getting out at that point. We've envisioned, and Tom Tidman has envisioned, a structure, a gazebo-like structure that will not be included in the Stanton funds, but possibly in sort of an overall design. As you know, that property has a fair bit of ledge sort of right down the middle, and so you have to deal with that appropriately. So really, the Stanton Foundation will be the fencing, the ground cover itself, the airlock gates, I mentioned the ground cover itself. We anticipate, and this doesn't show it super well, but there is going to need to be access to these areas because obviously, Route 2, 27, and also the entrance to Route 2 is not far from that property. And so construction of the pathways and the parking would be up in the upper area, the 352 parcel. So construction of appropriate parking facilities, that's also where access via Isaac Davis Way is anticipated, and then how you get there.
Thank you.
Selena.
Can you talk about a little bit about traffic and what kind of traffic, and is there any way that during the peak traffic hours on 27, would the park be closed during those times? any kind of studies that have been done?
Thank you. Yeah. So the size of the parking area is going to be 10 to 12 cars. That doesn't sound like a lot, but we've vetted that number with the size of parking available at similar sized parks in towns around us, and they find it's just adequate. That is because people tend to find a time that works for them. So Saturday morning's a little bit busier, but then you'll find people at various evening hours during the week, et cetera, et cetera. That in itself tends to really bring down literally the amount of traffic coming into and exiting from the dog park itself. We've talked to traffic study folks. They've said, well, so what size parking lot are you talking about? 10 to 12 cars. And they say, we couldn't even measure the impact of that on Route 27. They said that is such a small number that statistically it would be in the noise, if you know what I mean, in terms of any sort of a traffic study on that particular section. We also know that the Acton Housing Authority will be, developing a parking facility sort of up the street, and there are going to be traffic studies associated with that, but the usage there is also going to be on the smaller side. So we know it's a busy road. We have discussed the possibility of crosswalks should they be needed. We think that there is available additional parking at the public safety building, that there are a number of municipal slots there that could be used should the real pressure and an overflow situation arise. And we've also come across the fact that there is a safety improvement project on the state list for the Route 2 to Route 27 entrance ramp. Obviously no details, we don't know where it is, but we know there's lots of efforts to sort of keep an eye on the overall traffic situation.
Dave.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Just to follow on the parking question, the 10 to 12 cars, that isn't the cost of developing the parking lot and maintaining it isn't covered by this grant. Is that correct?
So that's a claim in the citizens petition. We are continuing to research that. I looked at budget proposals from 3 different neighboring dog parks, Westford, sorry, I forget the other 2, and they all put construction of parking lot on their estimated costs that then were funded by a Stanton grant. So there is empirical evidence that indeed construction, and it sort of fits with this notion of the Stanton grant covering hard construction costs, but we are in the process of confirming that completely. Selby's helping us by reaching out to Stanton at this point.
Is there anything else besides the parking that may or may not be covered by the grant? Is there like landscaping or anything else on that property that you're aware of?
So did you mean on the lower property, the dog park itself?
I mean anything like, yeah, that would be in the scope of a dog park.
Okay, yeah, so landscaping inside the park and landscaping associated with the park itself, that is included in and covered by the Stanton grants. They have a requirement for potable water, makes sense, both for dogs and their owners, but they do not pay for the water hookup. There's water easily available on 27. We anticipate that either maybe some in-kind gifts or support from the town could be pretty easily used to hook up a suitable water facility right there. So that is one item that's specifically excluded, but it is not a major cost or concern in terms of funding. And that's really it. They tend to not cover things like signs, etc., which aren't really necessary to bring a dog park online, other than rules, etc. And signage for basic rules, etc., is entirely coverable through the Friends fundraising activity, etc. So I think we've got a pretty comprehensive sort of pro forma budget. The Board of Selectmen asked for that early on in their process, and they were pretty happy with the pro forma budget as detailed enough for where we are in this process.
Great. And then, is there an appraised value of this land currently? The reason I ask is, this was part of this Walker parcel, it's quote unquote Walker parcel from a couple of years ago, and the total aggregate price tag was relatively high, and obviously there's a tenant currently on it. And when I think about the aggregate cost of the land, it's the cost of this project rather. While the standing grant sounds great, it does seem to be very dog park specifics. There's also the cost of what else could we do with the town do with this land, and is there an appraised value, for example, if they sold the land, what would the value of that, would that be? So technically that could be the cost of the park is having not sold the land, there's a cost associated with keeping the land. And then similarly with tax revenue, if any, I'm not sure if this is specific to Kennedy or any other land, but I'd just be curious if this specific part had an appraised value, and it could be really outdated, but the price paid for the whole parcel, including the housing authority part, was $1.8 million a couple of years ago, and I believe that was quite a bit above the appraised value. So just curious if you had a sense on what that was. But last question is really similar in vein is when the town voted against the Walker property to that development. The two issues that were cited were traffic, as we just discussed, as well as being close enough to the town center to impugn on the town's character. And I'm wondering if you had any outreach with non-abutters or other residents, just the sense on what a dog park would do towards the character of the center of the town. And again, that was something heavily cited in turning down the other development of the property.
Sure, a great question. So I guess I would say a couple things. One is, as we start dreaming about getting to the design of this thing, we're as a committee and beyond, we're very committed to a park that is very attractive on this parcel, which is, in many ways a gateway into Acton off of Route 2. Obviously, the work being done on Kelly's Corner is significant, and we want to sort of continue that in a sense. When we did our survey, and some of the numbers are here, I don't have all of them, but I could get them to you if you need them. One of the questions was about this particular site and how they would feel about this particular site. And there was significant support amongst people that we talked to for this particular site in terms of its central location and many of the things that you mentioned. Now, there was also concern about traffic, etc., so I understand that. But again, when traffic safety or traffic considerations came up at town meeting about this parcel, you're talking about a whole lot more than 10 cars on sort of occasional scheduled usage. So not that that isn't a concern, but we tried to sort of keep it all in perspective. And I think
that's fair. I think I'm less concerned about the traffic impact, and I think you answered it. And I'm not suggesting a dog park is going to hurt the town's character, but it was something cited. And another project that was considered for this plot was a senior center, and that was one that, again, every project has its own dynamics and its own traffic and its own sort of issues. So it's an interesting parcel, and I think the location itself, in just my view, the proximity to the on and off ramp to the highway, as well as the Kelly's Corner, as well as the town center, it's something that I think, again, speaking for myself, I want to think a little bit more about is a dog park aesthetically, I think is nice. But financially, again, with the appraised value and the actual costs that haven't been referenced here in the back of my mind is something that I'm going to dwell on a little bit. So thanks for the presentation.
Sure. I wonder if Mike might have a few things to add there.
Mike, go ahead. But if you could hold off on your question, if you had one, I'd like to get out of it.
No, it's not a question. It's the site itself. With regard to Dave's question about the appraised value, yes, we did pay 1.8 the assessed value was about 1.6, and the other couple hundred was to reimburse the former developer for some engineering fees, just to close the deal. But the thing is that the thing we need to be aware of when that particular parcel, especially when you talk about the value of that property, even though it is a key location, the size of it makes it really impractical for any kind of other commercial development, especially because of Isaac Davis Way. You effectively divide a significant parcel into two little pieces, one big enough for the housing plan, but then what's left, if you don't put in a dog park, basically you're left with just something that is basically unusable for anything, as long as we're restricted by Isaac Davis Way. If we could eliminate Isaac Davis Way, that would open up some of that dog park parcel. Maybe we could also use some of the open space from the housing parcel, and maybe you could really put something that is commercially viable in that space. But if it's not a dog park, then it's just you're just throwing away the rest of our. It'll cost us about $800,000 that we're walking away from. You'll never get it back.
Adam.
If that makes sense.
I'm sorry, Mike, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, Adam.
Hey, thanks. Thank you, Tom. I have to say, from a traffic perspective, I think I much prefer a dog park there with 10 parking spaces to any other type of development that might have, dozens or 50s or 100 parking spaces with cars turning in and out that close to all of those on and off ramps. A question regarding, is the dog park going to be exclusive for Acton Town residents only, and does the additional $4 fee that they're paying for the dog tags to help fund it and defray the costs, does that entitle them to use the dog park and invite friends, citizens, dogs from other towns? What's the concern with regard to overuse, especially being so close to the on and off ramps?
Sure. I think we've talked about this, and we haven't made any final decision yet, but in keeping with the majority of other dog parks in the area, it's not restricted. It's just too hard to enforce and police, and it tends to be self-selecting. So I suspect we have a number of people, I know we have a number of people in Acton going to Maynard, going to Ayr, etc., and they're probably going to stop going there when and if there's a facility closer to them. So I think as more and more towns bring them online and you develop a community again around these, it tends to sort of self-select itself out. When we talk to a lot of people, frankly, one of the things, a number of people said, I don't have a dog, but my children have dogs, and when they come to visit, I'd love to be able to take them there. And so you start to get into all of these difficult situations. So I don't think we're going to be restrictive, but it seems to work out okay, again, given what we've heard from neighboring towns.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I have a few questions. Okay, she's being quiet right now. I do actually happen to have two dogs currently. So I am interested in a few elements of this. One is who will own the land? Will the town continue to own it?
Yes.
But would the AHA project, will they own part of the parcel, or will it be shared? The town will own the whole land?
The AHA will own the way upper parcel, so Kennedy and back. They're purchasing it from the town, and then the lower parcels, the 348, 352, remain municipal properties. That's
where the septic is, right?
So yes, the current plans for the AHA project include putting the leach field on the 348 property where the dog park will be. We've checked with the Board of Health. We've checked with their architects, design firms, since the AHA project is, nicely moving along. There are no concerns about putting that usage on top of a leach field. We do have to worry about timing a little bit, just so that we don't build something and then rip it all up. The purchase and sale, basically, I'm sorry if I have that term incorrect, but basically the purchase and sale between the AHA for this senior housing project and the Town of Acton does include a $25K consideration where if basically to restore the dog park should work be done in a way that then sort of undoes some of the stuff that was worked. So it's clearly one of the cons, if you will, or one of the considerations, but to the best of our ability, everybody we've talked to says, yeah, we can figure this out.
And who has liability if something happens? With dogs fighting?
Oh, sure.
Or attacking people, and it's...
Sure, great question. Rec Department has confirmed that the town's existing liability covers all of that. There's nothing additional, no increases required. We definitely check that out. Typically, dog parks will have some pretty clear posted rules, and again, they tend to be sort of self-enforced. And so, the hope is that at least from a, we've done what we've needed to do to explain to people what the rules are, and if they go, sort of disobeying the rules or whatever, then hopefully that's an element in terms of the liability.
Now, your pictures are beautiful, the drawings. I have been imagining like every other dog park I've seen where it's just some chain link fence going up around it. Do you have any idea whether the grant would be sufficient to cover some, or would even possibly cover some of the beautification of the site? It was nice to have it look more historical.
Sure.
With the stone wall, etc.
Boy, that's a great question. All I can say is that we've talked to 3 design firms already. Several have had dog park design experience, and they're all excited about this project, about the elements of, this location, its relationship to the town and everything else. I interpreted their excitement as meaning they have some clever ideas, things that we can do. Now, whether we can afford it, if we end up having to augment and go above a $250K construction amount in order to achieve some of the nice-looking aspects, I think there is strong support on the committee and also on the Friends group to be using fundraising associated with that. So I could envision, we haven't planned it out, but I could envision a Friends campaign saying, hey, we wanted to bring some, nicer looking fencing to this, but it's going to cost a little bit of extra money. Can you kick in?
And I think that's
pedestrian lights.
When I first heard about this project and heard it was going right next to the AHA senior housing, I had a real disconnect in my head. I don't think my parents would like to have a bunch of dogs making noise outside of their house early in the morning. My parents live near a park where people go over 6 a.m. to run their dogs around. What has the AHA's response been to this project?
Complicated answer. I hope I'm being honest when I say the AHA was not concerned about noise, smell, etc. If you look at the distance between the two and also the natural slope of the land, there's going to be a pretty big, just sort of natural sound buffer between the two. Also, as you see in the sketch up there, we fully expect to do landscaping as quickly as possible, if not, over time, that also will further curtail any sort of noise. Their concerns were primarily about relationship to the neighbors. The neighbor relationship for the AHA is extremely important. Makes sense, undeniable. I'm not in any way criticizing. And so when they knew that the Isaac Davis Way neighbors primarily were concerned about this particular site for a dog park, they felt that they needed to do whatever they could to sort of support the neighbors.
Okay. And they will be coming to speak to us at our next meeting if you want to
Okay, good.
tune in for that.
As much as there are concerns about that, there are also many people, and I'm respectful of your comment, but many people who have said, "Oh, my parent would just love being able to go down, and especially with the gazebo that's outside of the park, etc., sort of enjoy that part of it." So, as always, pros and cons.
Yeah. My parents happen to live right next to an elementary school, so they have a wonderful time until lunchtime when over the phone I hear the kids screaming, and there are 10 floors up from it. So I know it's not, none of this is quiet stuff. I also happen to have just gotten a hound, and I'm sure, I live in town center, you could probably hear her down where you're talking about putting the dog park with the noise she makes.
Okay.
I think that's it for me. Thank you very much. Unless
Sure.
anyone else has any other questions, we'll move on to the next item. No? All right.
Okay. Again, thanks
Thank
everybody.
you.
All right.
There we go. Okay. Mr. Barrett, you are going to present the fiscal year 21 third quarter results, correct?
Yes, I am. Madam Chair, could I share my screen?
Please do.
Try to. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Steve Barrett, Finance Director for the town. I'm here to present Q3 FY21 results. We prepare a couple of spreadsheets that we post to the web. The data that's found in this presentation is extracted from those spreadsheets. I apologize in advance. I don't have any pictures. The prior two presenters had awesome pictures. I don't have any at all. So let's go to it. So if you look at the main economic engine of the town, the general fund, if you look at our total revenue for the fiscal year, and we put a couple of footnotes in there to kind of size it up, but you know, we're looking at a little over $100 million in total revenue. Through March 31st, we've taken in $76 million, which if you do the math is about 74.6%. So that's at the summary level. If you then go and break it down, property tax revenue, we're at 74.5%. You know, I want to jump right in and thank the committee members for their support through paying the property tax levy. The levy collection rate continues to hold steady at 98-99%, and that will carry the day. The next revenue item reported is state aid. Interesting, this was an area we thought, you know, we might have some concerns on, but right now we're chugging along at 78%. We get some MSBA reimbursement for the first twin school, which was almost 20 years ago. That reimbursement has come in. Finally, local receipts. While it only represents, say, 5 or 6% of total receipts, we do see a little bit of an issue there. The collections to date are 71.4%. So, again, we're going to go into that slide next, but from a high level, our economic engine is doing just fine. Now, digging into the area of local receipts, again, we put the total there, 71.4%. For the committee's edification, that number stood at 75% at this point in time last year. So digging into some of those totals, or those breakouts, our largest local receipt is motor vehicle excise. You know, that's at 74.3%. The problem with that is we don't bill that kind of on a linear basis. We bill excise on a calendar year basis. So even though that's at 74%, we do have some concerns with that revenue source. You know, in my mind, We've already put out the first commitment of calendar year 21. That commitment from the registry was about $300,000 short the same commitment last year. So, we've had some concerns there. The registry has had some issues. They've notified us that they're going to combine the second and third commitment, which we put out usually in April. They're going to combine that to the middle of May. So with a caveat of stay tuned, this one area I think represents kind of the biggest area that we're monitoring. Fees, licenses, and permits. I think the committee, if we look back as a group and look back to Q1 and Q2, that was performing 10 or 12% off of a linear average, hence the 64.7% now. We're hoping for a strong fourth quarter. We opened the doors to Town Hall, I think last Monday. So, we're still trying to catch up a little bit, but kind of a wait and see on that one. But I would say that fees, licenses, and permits have been off roughly 10 or 12% all fiscal year. Meals tax, while only a $290,000 revenue source, that's come in just fine online. And investment income, even though that's a $106,000 revenue source, that's had some challenges. Just to kind of frame it, in FY probably 20, our average interest rate of return was probably 1.5, 1.6, 1.7. You segue out a year now, and we're probably 30 or 40 basis points. So there has been an absolute deceleration in interest earnings. And as the committee knows, the Federal Reserve is keeping interest rates down. We'll see how long that lasts. But basically summarize.
We'll take the trade-off in 1 year's interest rate versus the rate that we took out for the North Acton Fire Station and the school building committee in Acton.
Absolutely. But to summarize, we do see a little bit of an issue with local receipts. Again, there's 3 revenue categories we're monitoring closely: motor vehicle excise, fees and permits, and also investment income. As it doesn't quite look at an excise, but in my mind, the excise is running a little bit behind schedule. Again, if you looked at the totality of this, we're projecting right now an approximate $200,000 to $500,000 local receipt shortfall. And that's as of today, May 11th. When we get our hands on and get notified of Commitment 2 and Commitment 3 from the Registry of Motor Vehicles, if that commitment comes out at $600,000, okay, we have some numbers to work with. If that commitment comes in at $200,000, we'll probably be on the high end of the revenue shortfall. So, again, the main economic driver of the town is the property tax collection rate. And again, that is doing awesome, and that will carry the day. But again, we do see some sensitivity at the local receipt level. On the expenditure side, we're trending pretty much on a linear basis. We have encumbrances in there, but we also front-end load our pension and our overhead funding. If you pull that out, you drop well below the 75%. Again, there's nothing really out of the ordinary there. But that kind of would pull our general fund together. And just before the questions asked, I guess our internal plan, and Steve Noon might remember this from the recession of 2009. Our internal plan is to offset any revenue shortfall with a general fund turnback. So that's kind of our internal plan. So moving on to the enterprise funds, these are going to be very interesting to the committee. I'll try to keep moving. Because some of these, you're not going to kind of expect what you're going to see. So starting out in the septic enterprise fund, under the capable leadership of Director Cheryl Ball, our health director, this fund is doing just fine. It's taken in over 100% of our estimated fees once you kind of pull out our retained earnings pledge. And if you ask, gee, why is it over 100%? You know, when talking to the director, what we're hearing is that, you know, people have been home and they've been doing, you know, Title V inspections, septic system pump outs, and also we've had some new system replacements. So we see a very strong performance from this enterprise fund, including its liquidity measures on a cash flow basis. The Transfer Station and Recycling Fund, Director Corey York oversees this fund. And again, we have another fund that 3/4 of the way through the year, it's already met its revenue expectations. You know, when talking to Corey today in preparation, he talked about how, you know, people are telling him they're home doing, you know, basement and yard cleanups. So that is kind of transferring to more items being brought down to the transfer station. So again, that fund on a revenue basis is performing fine. On a P&L basis is performing fine as well. The Sewer Enterprise Fund. So there's some bits and pieces to this. We bill betterments quarterly, apportion betterments on the tax bill to approximately 10% of the community. We also have monthly O&M to 600 or 700 customers. The school district being one of our biggest customers. So on a revenue and expense front, this fund is doing just fine. And this fund has always been a strong performer. So here's where things get a little bit off. The Ambulance Enterprise Fund. So think about it. When the pandemic hit, people basically came home. There wasn't a lot of traffic. There weren't a lot of outside activities or outdoor activities. So on some levels, I would have expected to see a much lower, you know, ambulance kind of yield. But what we are seeing is that in this enterprise fund, you know, we're predicting possibly $100,000 to $150,000 revenue shortfall. In talking with Chief Robert Hart, Fire Chief, who, you know, oversees the enterprise fund, you know, he's seen fewer emergency medical responses in the last year. This fund has been a very predictable, you know, fund. So to see revenues off 10 or 12% year over year for this kind of fund, you know, I think that's kind of par for the course. You know, less people out being hurt, which is a good thing. It will impact our revenue. So this enterprise fund is kind of under our watch right now. We're working with the chief. And again, any revenue shortfall we have here will be absorbed with the fund balance. And last but not least, our Transportation Enterprise Fund. So if you take out what has been pledged from general revenues and commuter lot revenues and put in the first day of the year, under the leadership of Governmental Affairs Director Austin Saganowitz, you know, Austin's been doing a good job putting in reimbursements to the LRTA. So we're actually over our budget there. So on the revenue side, we're at 109%. On the expense side on this fund, when the pandemic hit, the demand for our discretionary services, the CAT, shuttle, things like that, went way down. The town manager's office, John and Austin, they renegotiated our contract with our vendor. And what we did is, as you may have heard, we locked down our services to the vulnerable, to the people in town that really needed that transportation for medical procedures, medical testing, food insecurity. So we really cut down the expenses on that enterprise fund to preserve that $420,000, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But what might be of interest, though, to the committee, in terms of the enterprise fund, it's two major funding sources: general fund and the commuter lot revenues. As the committee's probably heard or driven by the train station, our commuter parking lot revenues have probably gone down 80 to 85% over pre-pandemic highs. We've advised Director Saganowicz that we don't believe he can get any contribution in FY22 from the commuter parking lot fund and possibly FY23. So, Austin was doing a nice job holding on to these funds, working with the manager's office, trying to cut down our cost footprint and to provide, services where they're really needed. So, a couple more slides. So, as the committee knows, the manager's office has been out on point on really trying to circle the wagons on assistance that's needed in the community. We provided rental assistance through the CARES Act, mortgage assistance as well. The Small Business Grant Program was a town-funded program. The transportation services are funded through an enterprise fund. We have this community development block grant. It's approximately a third spent. It's a regional collaborative grant. The Town of Acton is all the money comes through us, so we're kind of the main player in terms of distribution of funds. Of note would be that the micro enterprise loan program, they increased that level from $10,000 to $25,000. Also, the child care grants. There's also a new pilot program that John Mangiarotti was talking to me about with increased subsidies. Food pantry assistance, and boy oh boy, the help from the regional school district. Oh, Jason.
I'm gonna wait until we get to questions.
Oh, okay.
Unless Christy wants me to jump in now.
Well, Jason, do you want to say it now or do you want to wait?
Mr. Barrett, how many of the 43 businesses that were eligible for the Small Business Grant Program have either closed or moved out of town since they received their funding from the town?
Steve, can you hold off on that? Yeah. Can you finish what you were saying first? Because I think you were getting into the food pantry. And then we'll get back to your point, Jason.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, in terms of talking available assistance, you can't really go too far without talking about our partners at the Acton Regional School District. Their community food program, which is part of their funding through the CARES Act through the town, has been phenomenal, very well received. A big shout out as well to Laura Ducharme, our social services coordinator, the Council on Aging, and everyone's pitching in to try to make sure that we help anyone that needs help. And finally, under available assistance, the town assessor exemption program, while not, directly related to the pandemic, we're over $500,000 a year in abatements and exemptions. Just to bring up a slide, and not that John Mangiarotti can see into the future, but almost a year ago, John put this slide out that said, hey, as we go into FY21, here are the key areas that we might have a problem with. And John, we listed state aid, which we don't believe is a problem, and then we put local receipts down. And what we did is we tried to do a sensitivity analysis saying, gee, we have a 5% problem, that's almost a $300,000 shortfall. We have a 10% problem, it's $556,000. So where we're sitting today, right now, we're looking at between 5 and 10%. So again, this was put out to the committee about 11 months ago, and it was in reaction to committee questions of, okay, what happens a year from now if you have a problem? And another slide from last June was us saying, okay, if we do have a problem and have to come up with some savings, what will we do? Now, here is a slide that we presented last June. We really tugged hard on the first lever and the fourth lever. John kept the hiring freeze in place. A real hard stop Q1 and Q2, where, at times we probably had close to 24 vacancies. And some of these were probably in the public safety division as well. So the hiring freeze in place, again, the top lever up to 650,000. We pulled on that lever hard Q1 and Q2. You get down to the fourth lever, non-essential spending freeze, delaying capital projects. So that lever was really pulled down hard as well on Q1 and Q2. So in terms of how we're going to cover that shortfall, the first and fourth levers were the case. And just about done. So the committee had asked at the budget meeting for a little more detail on fund balances versus free cash. There's some accounting gymnastics that go in between. But, as you're seeing, the Septage Enterprise Fund is having a good year. So you can kind of extrapolate over that, their free cash was here, yet it's going to go up because they're having a good year. That's not always the case with enterprise funds, because some of them pledge their fund balance, for capital and things like that, and then that has to be kind of folded into the deck at year end. But what we tried to do here is, as the committee asked, hey, can you tell us what the fund balances are now versus the slide you only gave us what the certified free cash. And the one very interesting one here, which I think, Jason looked at this, I think, 1 or 2 meetings ago, or at the budget meeting when Austin Saganos was up there. Right now, our fund balance in transportation is about $427,000. Again, that is the funds that we were given early in the year from the general fund, the commuter parking lot, that essentially have not been spent. The idea here is to use this for future funding. It gets a little in the weeds. The problem with we can't use that 427 right now because we have to get it certified by the state. So that is kind of an interesting problem to have, or a concept to have. But again, this slide tries to, slide from a certified free cash number at the end of last year to where the fund sits now. Although, as the footnote says, it doesn't include the effect of fund balance reservations, and that is a little bit sticky in the weeds. But and the last item I had was at the budget meeting. We were asked to report our total overlay balances, and as the committee knows, annually we set an amount for an allowance and abatement. It's basically for uncollectibles. Those balances can add up over the years. Our total overlay balances, if you did a trial balance as of today, it would be about $1,348,000. And again, those are amounts that are pooled for any abatements and exemptions. And you'd say, well, okay, after you pay that, what's that money sitting there for? Well, ideally, you could say that we have to offset that by any real estate or personal property taxes that might not be paid. And we have an estimate that we carry internally for like appellate tax board cases. And if you said, well, okay, how much do you think you have in outstanding property taxes in ATB cases? I'd probably throw a $600,000 or $700,000 number out. And that is the end of the presentation, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your patience.
Could you please address Jason's comment, unless Jason would like to change what he has to say first?
I have 2 questions that perhaps that should go in opposite order, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Certainly.
Director Barrett, you just laid out $2.7 million worth of retained earnings in enterprise funds and $1.3 million in overlay retained earnings. Hearing fully hearing what you said, that there is potentially $600,000 to $700,000 worth of liability in the amount of money that has to be paid out of the overlay fund, which I would contend is high, and I would like you to bring 5 years worth of historical data to show having to spend that kind of money out of the overlay fund, because I think you've never had to spend that kind of money out of overlay fund. You have just shown over $4 million, and let's give you $500,000 for overlay expenses. $3.5 million in money that has been taken via taxation or via upside surprise from the taxpayers of the town. If you add that to the stabilization fund, you add that to free cash, do you not feel that those are all retained earnings, retained taxes, dare I say reserves, which is a loaded term, that have come out of the tax base and being held in various accounts on behalf of the town citizens of the town of Acton?
Sure. So let me get the question right. Yeah, absolutely, Jason. So when we decide to go into certain businesses, and let's pick the ambulance enterprise fund. When we decide to go into certain businesses, I think it's important to maintain a level of reserves. But I think if we had maintained, let's kind of segue over a little bit. If we had maintained 3 to 8% of total spending in reserves for the ambulance enterprise fund, we would possibly be insolvent soon. So I think, to me anyways, but I do think you bring up a point, which is these funds had to come from somewhere. We try to manage these fund balances. In the case of the Septic Enterprise Fund, the Board of Health, or the Health Department, I should say, salaries are divvied into, enterprise and revolving funds, and we try to manage those fund balances. We try to take capital out of these fund balances where necessary. I think you'll see when the budget supplement comes out, we'll have 5-year plans in there, and based on John Mangiaratti's leadership under the capital improvement program and the investments needed there, I think John has I think if we looked at that, I could pull it up, but I think there are millions of dollars of projected expenditures to be paid with enterprise funds over time. So
would it not make more sense to collapse some of these enterprise funds, since they already get a subsidy from the general fund? Would it not make more sense to collapse some of these general funds so that we have one bucket of money or fewer buckets of money, so that we can have a holistic view of our reserves versus our expected liabilities? And secondarily, yes, I fully understand that we're going to have a multi-year capital plan. We absolutely should have had that already. So by all means, show us what you expect to draw down from each of these enterprise funds in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and 10 years. That's the level of transparency that I'm hoping to see out of these funds, because without that level of transparency, I see no reason to hold separate buckets of money for different enterprise funds, unless there's a statutory reason, and so be it. But then, by all means, this is taxpayer money that is being held by the town, and to merely focus on free cash does not adequately reflect the amount of taxation that has occurred to the townsfolk.
Yeah, so let me just see if I can, I'm not sure I got one of the questions, but in terms of collapsing any of the enterprise funds, over my career here, over the last 20 years, and Steve Noon might remember some of this, we had a COA van enterprise fund that we folded into the general fund. When we went through the days where the nursing enterprise fund was having some difficult times. That was folded in to the general fund. You know, when Doug Halley was here running transportation, he told me that his dream was to fold transportation into the general fund. So, you know, these decisions are made by town meeting. You know, there
would you recommend we collapse some of them now?
Well, I probably have to. I like segmented businesses. I mean, look at the sewer enterprise fund. We've sewered 10% of the town. So that enterprise fund, that public utility that we run, really, you know, benefits and involves only 10% of the town.
I'll grant you that one. I'll grant you that one because it is a user fee-based fund. But some of the other funds, especially transportation, transportation is fed by the parking lot, but especially ambulance fund. Why don't we collapse this all into the general fund?
Well, it was interesting. Ambulance used to be in a revolving fund, and then in like 2010, to take some pressure off the general fund, we started the enterprise fund. You know, it's funny, I did talk to the chief. You know, this enterprise fund, you know, it takes care of 9 personnel with all of their benefits. Starting this year, too, in FY22, we took $30,000 of OPEB from the general fund stable and moved it over to the ambulance enterprise fund so that the ambulance enterprise fund would start helping to pay off the OPEB. You know, I think if you look at the ambulance enterprise fund, the 9 personnel represent 22% of the fire labor force. The subsidy helps to maintain the account. We think it's well worth it to cross-train the benefits where, you know, just the people in the ambulance, they're also assisting in things much like fire service. We also have people on the ambulance helping out with vaccinating our homebound seniors. Now, you know, whether that could be done as a general fund activity,
why is that not coming under nursing? If it's vaccination, why is that coming under nursing? So I understand why you want to keep these separate funds. I understand why, as a town, as the town manager and as the town director, finance director, you want to keep these separate funds. But I would like to implore my fellow members of the committee to understand that when we talk about an amorphous term of reserves, we need to pay attention to free cash, stabilization funds, and all of these other funds, enterprise funds and revolving funds, that have retained earnings in them, which represent money that has been taken from the taxpayers. And it needs to all be accounted for and all be added up when we talk about the level of rainy day capability, ability to handle unforeseen expectations, the money that has been taken from taxpayers. So I get it from an accounting perspective why you want to keep it separate, but don't then turn around and say reserves are only free cash, because that's not accurate. That's not fair to the taxpayer. I do have a separate topic, Madam Chair, if I may ask, the one I asked earlier, which is of the 43 business entities that received the $4,000 grant from the small business grant, how many of those entities are either now insolvent or have moved out of town?
Jason, I do not have the answer to that question. I will follow up. You know, I'll have to talk to the land use folks and get some information. But that's a great question.
It's at least 4 or 5, and I would love for you to track that, please, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have at this time. I think you're on mute, Madam Chair. We can't hear you.
I suppose I can step in. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have one. I have two, actually.
Okay.
And then I may try and help you bail out of the hole you just dug with Jason. But I will talk about general fund free cash. Sounds like our local receipts are going to be light, 5 to 10%. Have we saved enough, do you think, on expenses to cover that? Are we going to have a replenishment of free cash of 0, 500,000, or $1 million? Hey, or all of the above?
Yeah. So right now, Steve, you're right where we are. Between a 5 and 10% local receipt shortage or shortfall. Again, the big caveat being the Registry of Motor Vehicle Excise Commitment 2 and 3, which we'll know in a couple of weeks. But yes, given the two levers that the town manager threw and stuck to, right now, our plan is to have enough to cover an approximate $500,000 revenue shortfall and replenish free cash or reserves by 500,000. So I'll use the word targeted, but our kind of current thinking on a total general fund turnback of $1 million would accomplish that. It would cover a revenue shortfall, and it would put 500,000 back into free cash.
Okay, good. As far as enterprise funds go, the sewer one is totally legitimate. And my criteria for the legitimacy of an enterprise fund is, does it serve somewhat less than the entire population, and does it derive most of its revenue from fees? Sewer meets that in both criteria. The others are all kind of in a gray area. Transportation's one. I'm having a hard time not laughing at the chat comments, but anyway, we have other departments. Rec is pretty well self-funding. It's not an enterprise fund. A lot of the building department activities are self-funding. They're not an enterprise fund. But yet septage and transportation are. So I think more to the point, Steve, I think maybe we need to look at a bunch of these situations and figure out why we have the ones we have and not have the ones we don't have. Nursing was a great example. We weren't ever close to covering the costs there. Ambulance has been, up until this year, pretty solid cash flow. But again, it's part of the core service of providing a fire EMS function. So yeah, I think we have to look at what percentage of revenue comes from fees rather than taxes. Certainly an enterprise fund that is substantially supported by the general fund subsidy really should be a candidate for not being an enterprise fund. But like I said, it's more a question of what do we have and why do we have them would be the best way to approach what we have for enterprise funds. Like I said, I'm good on sewer. I'm kind of good on transfer station, though I keep thinking that had some sort of a throwback to the old Neswick days. And the fact that we had a ton of money in a transfer station reserve that we needed to spend. But you can help me out with the history on that one. But that's my 2 cents on
I would just jump in and say that, the septage enterprise fund, the transfer station enterprise fund, and the sewer enterprise fund, I don't think those have received any subsidies over the years, to your point.
Yeah.
Another comment on the ambulance enterprise fund it gets in the weeds a little bit, but we were basic life support, which means an EMT shows up. We made a move 5-6 years ago to implement advanced life support. Our men and women had to become trained to be paramedics, but our revenue projection at the time had another, $350,000 of revenue coming in to offset a lot of those costs.
Yep.
And the beauty of it is when we were a member of SMARA, which was the Central Mass Emergency Response Group, we shared a paramedic with neighboring communities, and it was a wide distance. Our decision to bring advanced life support services to the town meant a dramatic drop in response times, because now our ALS is just in our town. Our men and women are providing that service, and there's been substantial revenue. And as you said, the ambulance revenue has been pretty predictable. So in my mind, if that wasn't in an enterprise fund, it might not have been worth that cost investment to go after that revenue. But I think these are things we can continue to debate. Absolutely.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. I would like, Jason, for you to email me the reminder that we should have a discussion, or I'll talk to Christine going forward about philosophy around the enterprise funds.
Yes, Madam Chair, will do.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions for this?
I said my piece.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised. Thank you very much, Mr. Barrett. Moving on to warrant articles. They need our recommendations by, ideally, we will have a meeting June 1st. It would give us 2 meetings to review warrant articles, discuss them, and provide our recommendations. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 27th. So my hope here is that we can assign our articles and be prepared to discuss some of them, make recommendations on some of them at our next meeting on the 27th, and then have one the following week on the 1st, of which we wrap them up. Does that work for people?
Sure.
Mike?
Yeah. Did you send us those warrant articles?
They, Mark Holt sent them to us
When? I don't recall seeing.
yesterday.
Yesterday.
A couple days ago.
No, it was yesterday. They got posted, given to the Board of Selectmen and us yesterday, which is why we haven't had much time to.
Somehow I couldn't find it in my email. Maybe I wasn't looking for something from Mark and it might have gone.
I will send it to you again. Would you like it right now, or do you want to just?
We can send it later.
Okay.
But I think I'm not the only one that did not receive them.
Okay, they went to the general FinCom list, if that helps anyone.
It came in at 7 p.m. yesterday.
Yeah, Mike, I got them too, so I received them.
Okay, I assume I will take town operating budget.
It's yours. You want to share it so that we're all looking at the same time?
Let's see if I can do that.
Can I make a request?
Certainly.
Adam, you're definitely taking notes on who gets which article.
I am.
Adam, what's your request?
If nobody wants to fight over it, because I've already been doing some research on the enterprise funds, although it seems like a very hot topic, so I may get some contention here. I was planning on just taking all the enterprise funds again, as I had done last year. I was planning on picking the currently listed articles number 28 through 33.
Wait your turn.
I'm taking my turn now.
Hold on. I'm going to share this list. Let's get the technology figured out.
There are 42 warrant articles on the list currently, which means that each of us needs to take at least 4 or the equivalent thereabout.
Does this work for everyone? Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so Adam, are you saying you would like Articles 3 and 4?
I said 28 through 33, but I'm looking on the PDF version with the multiple page describing the warrants as well, and I'm looking on page 4 of that. So I'm assuming it's the same. Let me just see if it's the same.
Don't assume.
Let's see, 33, transportation, and
Hold
I said
on,
through 38.
Adam?
Yes, yes,
Can we work off of the spreadsheet that I have up right now? It was one of
yes.
the items.
Yeah,
things that-
I'm looking at it right now to make sure it is the same as the other PDF. So I'm looking at both. It looks like it is. So 28 through 33 is basically all of the enterprise funds. Yep, that's correct. 28 through 33.
Is anyone going to fight him for that? I know, Dave, you generally would do our commuter lot fund.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's some dynamics there with the pandemic, but maybe it makes sense just one person handling them all. Corey York is very easy to talk to and can explain everything as well as I could on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's fine with me. You said 28 through 34? Adam?
Sorry, I was on mute. 28 through 33.
Okay.
And you took number...
I've got 2. We don't touch on number 1.
Right.
Town officers. So do we have someone who would like capital infrastructure?
3 and 4 go to Mr. Noon.
I don't recall speaking.
We have the first article is for smaller items, and the second one is for items that will quite likely require borrowing.
Madam Chair, I would like 5, which is the wastewater treatment rehabilitation, if
Certainly.
possible.
Well, hold on, I need takers for articles 3 and 4.
Okay.
That's my way of saying I don't want 3 and 4. I want 5.
If Steve's gonna pass on 3 and 4, give me 3 and 4.
Thank you, Jason.
You don't have to take them both.
They're part and parcel of the same
Yeah.
thing.
Adam, do you have those?
I do, thank you for checking.
Okay, so we have through Article 5 now. Christine is going to take the ABRSD assessment.
Mike's got 7.
Is that good, Mike?
Sure.
Roland's got 8.
Is Minuteman Regional is Mike. Okay.
Roland, do you have community
8.
preservation?
And 9.
Yeah, what's the part 2? Did he go over that tonight?
I'm thinking that must be using the set aside money for the farm.
Yeah, that they probably segmented that out so if it failed,
Yeah.
it wouldn't hold up 8. Right.
Okay.
So what is 10?
So my recommendation is that since Christine has been attending the school committee meetings, that we give that one to her.
Okay, but what is it? Do you know?
No,
Christine, do you know?
she's not on. She had to leave.
Oh,
I'll take the 11.
All right. Hold on. 11. Do you mean the land exchange or the
The drive up.
drive up? Okay, so we'll give Christine the land exchange.
Christine's gonna regret dropping off early.
I told her she was getting the school district.
There you go.
She agreed to take it.
No, I trust you. I trust you. So Han's got 11. 12.
Men general bylaw, archaeology, ceremonious stone landscapes. Any interest?
What the hell was that?
Well, I know. What is that?
I will take it. It sounds exciting.
I'll
I
take
can
12
take
and 13.
Yeah, I was going to say, I
Okay.
just watched Indiana Jones. I could take 12, but go ahead.
I think Mike beat you to it. All right, so Mike has 12 and 13.
Give me
any
a second.
interest-
And 14.
Mike has 14 also?
Yeah, if he takes 13, he takes 14 too.
Okay. Okay.
Didn't we talk about 127 Strawberry Hill Road before?
Yeah, that's a holdover from the last meeting.
Yeah, they got
Yeah,
shot
it's come
down.
back.
Oh, they've come back. Okay.
Do you want me to
You did
take that?
last
I
time.
had it last year.
Would you like to do it again?
Yeah, because I'll have a little bit of history. So that's number 15, Strawberry Road.
Yeah.
16's got Roland's name all over it.
Yes, I was just gonna say that. And
Okay.
I take 17 and 18 too,
All right.
and then I'd be done.
19's got Mike's name all over it.
Mike's got a lot so far.
What's that?
Dog
Okay.
park, Mike. 19.
Sure.
He's the only one holding a dog right now, so he gets.
I can take 20 and 21. I mean, are we doing the citizens petitions too? I mean,
Yes, we are.
Just in case, yes.
okay, I'll take 20 and 21.
I would like 22 and 23.
They're all yours?
I thought we were done with the terminology of select board. What is this?
You and me both.
I'm gonna find out. That's what I figured.
I have to say, this is going really well.
What have you got so far, Dave?
Yeah.
I'm biding my time.
All
There's
right.
so many volunteers. This has never happened.
Yeah, I'm surprised how quickly we've gotten through this.
I vote Roland Bourdain for 24 because of the fact he's always talking about the cars and exchanging the cars and buying cars and selling cars.
Yeah,
No,
Roland, you're screwed on Roland too.
I thought that was the lease.
Same thing. It's all yours, Roland. 25.
That's the last
Wait,
one.
you're
I
giving
can
Roland
take
24?
that. I can take that.
You want to take that, Sohana? Thank you.
Yeah,
Wait a second, which one is Sahana
that's my
talking about?
backyard.
The 26 Carlisle
She's
Road.
talking about 25, 26.
Yeah,
Carlisle Road.
25.
Sorry, Roland, you're stuck with the cars.
What? Which number is that?
24.
24.
Vehicle trade-in proceeds.
Get rid of them all. They can use their own.
25.
Sahana just took that.
26.
I'll take it.
I've got capacity, but whatever.
Why don't you take 27?
And 28, because you used to that. And 29.
No. Adam took those.
Yeah. David's welcome to help me with 28 if he wants to. Or
Sure.
29. But looks like he's getting 27, is that right? Collective
I think so.
bargaining agreement. So that's David Wellinghoff. Okay.
The rest are really easy.
Can I pause you for just a moment, Christy?
Yes.
I'm just looking at my list. I want to make sure I've got the right people's initials on everything. Right now, I've only got David Wellinghoff on number 27. Is that correct with you, David?
Well, I'm with everyone in spirit on the others.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss one that you already had. I'm not trying to poke a stick.
Too late.
Well, he could take 17 and 18 from me if he'd like. That'd be helpful.
All right, so
Yeah,
number
Roland,
28.
if you have plenty, I'm happy to take a couple of the others.
If you could grab 17 and 18, that'd be good. That'd be the
Okay.
energy efficiency, electrical aggregation. I mean, I can do those too, because I'm kind of interested in those anyway.
All right, 17 and 18 mean.
Okay, sorry. Now let me back up. So 17 and 18 went to David Wall. Okay. Got it. And so we're at what, like 34?
Yes. Did you not take that? Was that not
No.
your list?
No, I did not.
I'll take it.
I'll take the
Yeah, I thought
revolving
that sounded
fund.
like a Steve one.
Steve
Yeah, I'll
Moon.
take revolving funds.
Okay, Steve Moon got 34.
35 is a no op. No one takes 35. It's just it's a nothing.
Okay, dash. Oh, my computer
Aren't
doesn't
the
like
rest of
dash,
these
dash.
The ones that we don't have to
Authorized
think about?
easements, is that Kelly's Corner stuff?
No, these are just usually general purpose.
Yeah.
We have them every year, and they just grant authority to the town manager to do things.
Unless something has changed, I think they should be no-brainers.
They are no-brainers.
Basically 35 through all the way to 42 don't need a sign. Is that what we're saying?
Well, somebody needs to be assigned to just say, we recommend this article.
Even though they're on consent?
Yes.
But if they're held, then
Yes, if they're held, somebody has to say we recommend. I'll take them.
All right.
Jason Cole. Okay, that's the list.
Okay, next meeting, we'll start reviewing articles. I'm going to invite Tara to come speak to us about her two planning board related citizen petitions. The Isaac Davis Way people who did the Eliminate the Dog Park Matching Fund citizens petition will also be presenting. Is there anyone else we should bring in for that or for the June 1st meeting?
Well, I think it might be interesting to hear the AHA side directly from them, because they're going to be building out if they're going to be building the whoever's going to be building the building next to it on the Kennedy property. You know, I'd really like to hear their side of it, so that we know if they say, yeah, well, having a dog park over the septic is not going to harm anything. I just think we should have all sides before we make any recommendation.
I think that sounds good.
Has anybody watched or reviewed the Board of Selectmen meeting when the dog park was discussed heavily for, it was a couple hours or more, and a large portion of that was presentation and discussion for the Isaac Davis Way point of view. Have any of you seen that?
No, so I didn't.
Yeah, then you'll want to have them on. Okay, thank you.
Yes, they will be at our next meeting. Please let me know if there's anyone else. I will try to get the AHA either for the next meeting or June 1st meeting. We won't vote until we've heard from them or heard that they are not interested in attending.
What about a statement from the police regarding traffic and the interchange with Route 2?
Good point.
Okay. Whose article is that?
Mike Majors.
Mike's.
Mike, could you reach out to the police, please?
Just repeat what article you're talking about.
Dog park.
Dog park.
The what?
Number 19.
The dog park.
Oh, I thought you were talking about traffic. Okay.
Well,
okay, yeah, I'll take it. Sure.
Well,
yeah, I got it.
So the concern was that before, when they wanted to put the preschool, the traffic impact, I mean, that's a lousy intersection, we know that. And just how that, a driveway or whatever, I mean, I don't think the volume's negligible. There's not much volume really. But how could that impact that intersection is my concern.
Didn't he address that this evening?
Yeah, I think he did.
Well, he did, but we didn't hear really from what the police chief said.
I can talk to the chief.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Roland, would you be happy with simply, I think, as you said, a statement from the?
Yeah. We don't need to take the chief's time to come to the meeting. Yeah, just a statement saying it's not going to impact anything. I think it's fine.
And you want it notarized and certified.
In triplicate.
Jason might want that, but I don't.
In triplicate.
Can I just throw out a small opinion?
We put the bike track there instead?
I'm sorry, Adam, is it on a specific?
Yeah, it's just regarding this conversation about the dog park. And my only opinion would be that as the FinCom, we should try, I appreciate they're looking at it in a more holistic community perspective, but I think it's also important as FinCom members to try to keep our investigation and recommendation or disrecommendation of that more from a financial perspective, just to make sure that we're giving the piece that the citizens want and need from us. That's all. I don't mind asking all these other questions. I just want to make sure we're not bogging down in details that shouldn't be coming, or recommendations about details that maybe should not be coming from FinCom.
I agree. So far, I think everything that we have discussed or planned to has a financial impact.
Great.
Okay, I'd like to table the stabilization fund discussion for a little while. If that's good, or we can start it now.
I'm good with that.
Oh,
I have one piece of advice for Adam on the list of articles.
Okay.
Get it to us tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah, and just use the titles. Forget the
Yeah.
numbers.
Oh, I know. Because I was going to say, you know, the
They'll
numbers
change.
changed last year. That much I do remember.
But Madam Chair, if we could direct the clerk to please get us that list before the close of business on Thursday, I'd appreciate it.
Adam, could you please give us that list?
Would tonight be okay?
That'd be lovely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Listen, you shouldn't sign up for more articles than you can remember in your head.
That's what the clerk is for, sir.
Madam Chair,
So,
well,
pardon me, I just want to make a note about the table discussion.
Adam, could you please tell us which minutes?
Yes, we have April 27th minutes to approve. They were sent out by email. Did everybody review them?
We had one modification to minutes from Mr. Majors. I believe that was the most recent March minute. That was the April minutes, correct? The April 27th. He recommended that we change the description of the Kelly's Corner discussion to include the possibility that part of the discussion was not just about making changes to the plan, but working with the plan as designed. Assuming that is amenable to everyone, I would like to hear a motion regarding the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of April 27th.
Second,
Wonderful. Adam, could you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Pardon me. And the second was from Mr. Majors, correct?
correct.
Should I abstain or should I vote since I left early in the meeting? I've never had to do this before.
Up to you.
Yep, you can do either. So I will call the roll now. So this is the motion to approve the minutes from April 27th. Christy.
Aye.
Christina Russell is absent. Dave.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Mike.
Yes. Yes.
Roland.
Aye.
Sahana.
Abstain.
Steve.
Aye.
And I say aye. Thank you. Motion carries.
We have another set of minutes we reviewed for the March 29th meeting. That was the SIP meeting that we had jointly with the Board of Selectmen. I have not received any decision for amendments to those minutes, so if we could please have a motion.
Christy,
Yes.
I apologize. I don't see the March 29th minutes having come through recently
It's
in a
coming out
way.
this morning.
Oh, this morning?
They came together.
10:25 this morning.
In the same email.
No.
Different email.
I did not get that.
Well, one right behind the other, I think.
Yeah, I didn't get that at all. Okay, all I can abstain from the vote is fine. So if somebody wants to make the motion.
Motion to approve the minutes of
March 29th.
March 29th.
Second that.
Adam, please roll the,
Roll call.
Okay. Christine, or sorry, Christy.
aye.
Christine is absent. Dave.
Say it again, Dave.
Hi.
All right. Now my computer's acting up. Jason.
Aye.
Mr. Majors.
Yes.
Roland.
Aye.
Sahana.
Aye.
Mr. Noon.
Aye.
Sorry, I should use formals for everybody, and I will abstain. The motion carries.
All right. Any liaison reports?
I don't
Jason.
have mine.
The school building committee for the second twin school proceeds apace, under budget and slightly behind schedule, but they promised they'll get caught up. I believe everyone was invited to the opportunity to sign a beam before the topping off ceremony. The window for signing that beam is closing shortly, if not already. By all means, please go lend your John Hancock to the project, and thank you all for your ongoing support of the new twin school building.
Yes, the last chance to sign it was last Friday.
Unless you've been out of town, in which case you can go up in a bucket on Monday, but never mind.
Okay. Any other liaison reports? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm pleased to make a motion
Please
that we
do.
adjourn.
Wonderful. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And
I wanted to hear the liaison report.
I thought that was
It was the committee on adjourning.
Adam. Please call the roll.
You have to get off the mute first.
I didn't even know I was on mute. I said so many things that were important, and you missed them all. All right. Christy, please.
Aye.
Christine is gone. Dave.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Roland.
Aye.
Sahana.
aye.
Steve.
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the 27th.
Good
One
night.
of your dogs coming for a visit.